I I understand what everyone is saying, but the core of the problem, that is where it starts, in the home.
Is in the
That's where
home?
the core of the violence starts for a
Sometimes it's not
child
in the home, you
in
know.
the
Hey,
home.
so
No,
can I
no,
interject?
Or,
no. Listen,
or
no. Listen,
I
listen,
want
grandparents
to
Mary.
share
should
something.
need to bring up
I
that
think
child in.
Listen, Mary. Wait a minute.
Coco, it's
So,
in.
yes,
Hey, I think one of the things we cannot lose sight of, especially when we have conversations about domestic violence and abuse, including parental abuse, as people of color anywhere in the world, is a lot of this is rooted in deep colonial history.
Yes, I was about to say that.
From beatings that were thought to be, even the Bible that we quote was not written for us to know of equality, right? It was written to justify colonialism. It was written to justify violence. And of course, as the oppressed, as the abused, the only people we had a little power over were the kids that we were bearing, that were technically still belonging to the colonial masters, but at least we had some power over them. And so those are the power dynamics that were passed on and continue to be passed on to this day, because the truth is you really don't need to spank a child to achieve discipline. And I think that's where the confusion is, right? Spanking a child, even the swat on the bottom, it's a quick reflex, but there's also history in that. Right? The spank and the rod of correction was to justify the slave driver's whip on the field. Okay? In order to justify me whipping you to work, whipping you to do things and to achieve an outcome, I had to make sure you understood the dynamic. And if I understand that dynamic go wrong, I would do it at home as well, because now it's what I believe to be true. So I think we need to reframe. I think even when we talk about religious leanings, we have to be truthful about some of the language that's in our religious books and how they were used to perpetuate control and power dynamics. And yes, it happens with men and women. The child who's beaten, who grows up and you're asking, why doesn't he know not to hit his wife since he didn't hit back his dad? Well, he saw a power dynamic. In his household, his dad was the most powerful person. So in his household, now that he's grown up, he's also the most powerful person. So he doesn't expect the wife to hit back. And we've seen it in our culture. We'd be lying. I grew up watching people literally say to women, well, you hit him back where you expect. You hit him back where you expect, meaning he gave her a bigger beating and she looked for that. She should have just taken licks and go home. Right? And so I definitely think everyone has a point, and Mary's point is valid, but we have to explain what the validity comes from. And it's valid because the reason why we don't think it's wrong is because we have been generationally.
Yes.
Multi-generational trauma. That's what it's called. Resulting from slavery.
Yes. A child will sit down doing their homework, and because you're not getting it, boop.
Yes, yes.
A child will sit down combing the hair. The mother sit down there, she might even wash herself up, but she get there and she lap there, you have to smell everything. So you're a little bit moving. She take the comb and she drag the comb in your head. Or she slap it.
That is wrong.
No one never know the true meaning why the child, hold on, Mary. No one know the meaning, the reason why the child not staying quiet. Some little kids, they're bipolar. They have a low attention span.
Yes.
So keeping you parting one part, combing it, twisting it, pulling the hair. Black people children hair always hard and tattered. They put some lard in it or some coconut oil, but they get this small teeth comb just pulling at your hair. You retaliate, you get licks for that. So when you get out into society, because I'm talking about abuse now from children against children.
That's well, it's the same
this
thing,
ain't no wife yet.
Power dynamic, but again, it's the same thing. Children act out what they see and what they're told and what they're taught, and it's not enough to say do as you're told, not what you see. You always know what you see, right? We have a culture, especially if we're talking Trinidad and Tobago, where liquor is life in so
alcohol.
Many ways. Liquor is fun. Liquor is sweet. Liquor is the best event. you can't then be surprised that the first chance a child gets to taste something, they're not going to try to taste it. Why should they not, right? What makes it different? Again, we've talked about the cake issue. I don't have any problem with rum cake, don't get me wrong, but I'm just saying we have to be honest about everything that informs our society. Right? I don't want people to take it away from rum cake, right? At the same time, we have to be honest about what our society upholds and the hypocrisy of it when we suddenly say don't do this or don't do that. We have to be balanced and honest in what we know. But the first thing is, the truth is we've never actually had national therapy, right? To this day, nobody's ever actually gone around the country and said, let's talk as a community, village to village, about the historical colonial relics in our community. Let's talk about the psychological colonial relic. Let's talk about...
But they don't know that. They don't understand that.
Let's talk about
Do you know that?
Talk about why colonialism has led us to prefer lighter skin, to prefer skin bleaching, to prefer certain looks of hair, certain colors in our
dolls.
Right? Yes.
Dolls that we grew up with.
About the fact that to this day, people don't still talk about raising in marriage, right? People literally believe if you can marry someone of a certain hue, a certain ethnicity, you're literally raising your entire family and community's pedigree. We know this. Everybody knows I've been worked up about this since I was a teenager, but it's something that we just say in hushed tones. You know, we were home 4 years ago. We were at a hotel. 2 kids were coming up. And the owner of the hotel, one kid was very dark skinned, the other one was mixed race. And the owner of the hotel reflexively started preening the mixed race little girl and say, oh, you're so pretty. I bet you're the prettiest one everywhere.
Oh, that got Dr. Dukes. Oh, man.
And, well, not just me. I remember Winston was like, what was that? Oh, my God. And it's because we don't even realize when we do it, right? We don't realize when we do it. So that's a form of mental abuse right there, because a darker skinned child is now realizing I'm going to have to grow up to get these compliments. I'm going to need the hair and the skin and the face to do it. And we're all guilty.
Joanne,
we're all guilty.
Thank you so much, Dr. Duke. Joanne, you could come in with that darker skin. You grew up around situation as that.
Probably not. But I would just simply say I probably wouldn't want to go down that road. But yes, within the Caribbean community, I would just say from that perspective, within the Caribbean community, you have that. You have one kid being fairer, the other one being darker. You are given the names to go with it.
Yes.
You understand?
Yes.
And the impact that does have on the others is real. It's very, very real. However, I just want to kind of go back to what the question that Cindy had posed about what role the church should play, the church and the other places of worship in the community with regards to domestic violence in TNT. You know, I think we need to have a national helpline. We need to have counseling. We need to have education and parenting programs, especially for very young mothers and fathers. And just to highlight some things that Cindy was always also speaking about, we're talking about the abuse starting in the home. But I have always said that because of our past, you know, it influences our future. And that past, I'm talking about the time our ancestry and the slavery connection. So they call it they basically call it multi-generational trauma resulting from slavery. So you can have sort of post-traumatic stress. And, you know, based on all of what is happening in TNT and across the Caribbean, or wherever the Caribbean communities or the American community or wherever we are as a Black people, because of that experience called slavery, we are acting out, and it's happening generationally. It's being handed on, and until we learn to unlearn that, we are going to be where we are. And I think that is where the role of the church themselves also have to address, because we are all in that pot. We were all there, so we all are taking it inside of the church. So each and every one of us needs to heal. And that's going to have to be a significant educational programs, counseling, you know, and well, national helpline will come in when somebody needs to call, but mainly the counseling, the education, recognizing what happened when we were, when our ancestors were enslaved and how that was handed on to us. We now need to address that.
Yes.
If I'm sorry.
Yes. Yes, we're going right back to you and Mary.
Yeah.
A little, because of because of the changes that we made right now in this conversation.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm saying here now is that we are not the only people in this world that was enslaved or treated unkind.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
We also have the Jews that they were burned in
Yes.
gas chambers and what have you. They were killed.
But they also have problems. They have.
No, listen
Actually,
to me.
Yeah, go ahead.
You know what? Actually, if you're using, let's use the Jewish example, Mama. One of the things that Jewish synagogues do really well is they actually talk about the oppression that happened to them. They talk about what happened and why it shouldn't happen again, and they use the never again, right, narrative. Unfortunately, in our churches and other places of worship from colonizations, I'm talking about even mosques, even in synagogues, temples. When I say temples, I'm speaking more like Hindu temples, where colonization ruled what happened. They haven't engaged in that conversation in many places yet. And then when they do engage in it, of course, we then have to start asking questions about extremism, because I know those who are Muslim will say, actually, we have the conversation, which is why we fight the way we fight, because we are undoing the crusader and the colonizer. So I'm going to be careful there. But let's be specific now to the Christian church. I do think a lot more conversations need to happen around the idea of colonization and how colonization is reflected in the way we're taught to message. And this isn't specific to Pastor Wendy, because I've actually listened to a lot of what she's doing, and she's addressing it. She's even addressing the misogyny that's baked in the way it was taught to us, you know, because we're given books that were written with intent, and we have to always ask ourselves, what was the intention of the worship, which was, it was meant to subjugate, it was meant to make sure the oppressed, whether female, whether ethnic, whether sexual, right? It was definitely used to subjugate. And I think that decolonization conversation needs to happen. It needs to happen on a political scape as well, because even our politics are colonized, and we're still acting out the role of the colonizer. When
our laws.
Yes, and not only that, when the colonizers left, all we did was replace it with new people who also had certain institutional and colonized mentalities, so that they're only continuing, but now they're the ones with the power. So until we get into the conversation of decolonization, misogynization, we're not really addressing, to me, the root of it. But I'm going to withdraw myself because I don't want to overwhelm the conversation. This is supposed to be your show.
Yes, because you know the show twisted right now. We can't even get into other areas because we still have to hear back from Dr. Wendy, we have to hear back now again from who was up? Mary
Avanell.
and the Keino. So now we are going to go right now into Avanell.
Yes. I think everyone makes really valid points. From Mary and even, you know, Pastor Wendy. And I think it's very important to realize the main term when it comes to abuse is control. Going back to why we don't raise our hands to hit our parents back is because we know we can't hit them back. If we hit them back, it's either, you know, we kill them or they kill us. You know, we dead. So when it comes to that, we can't hit them. So when you go out into a situation and you go to school, you find kids fighting. It starts with it kind of trickles down into that. This kids fighting at school. And They sought out people, you know, the bullies, they sought out people they can lay that level of control on. And then it progresses into their relationships where, you know, they might attempt to hit the wife the first time. And the minute she lets him do it and get away with it is where it becomes a repetitive incident where it continues happening.
But if you slam him, slam him with a frying pan.
Slam him down. He'll never do it again. He will never do it again. So it's that search for that level of control. And when it comes to the church's role, the biggest problem we have right now, and it's something that I didn't see growing up as a child because church was very important. The biggest problem we have right now with churches is trust. A lot of people don't know how to trust church. It's become so monetized where, you know, it's more what you could give pay them. It's what you give to them than what they can give to you, or what is the social focus of that community that they're within. People have no trust in churches. Our parents aren't raising up children within that lifestyle like we used to. You know, in our younger days, we were raised in the church, and now we're not doing the same for our children. So there's so much lacking, and the churches aren't starting any initiative to get to the young people that get to the parents. Why am I not seeing your children in church? Why are you no longer coming to church as a parent? Like, find out where the stem of the matter is and how we can fix it and bridge that gap with religion and community.
So society, you are saying that society collapse?
Absolutely. The level
morality go.
Morals, there's no value system.
Take into consideration, we're not bashing a church. No. But look what churches allowed for years with these Catholic priests.
Exactly. And so that's where it starts.
How do you make a comeback to have young men come into your church, or a well knowledgeable parent feel free and comfortable to send their son to be an acolyte behind a priest again? How you build that back? How you narrate that kind of confidence back into children and society? I wonder if Dr. Duke want to communicate.
I want to say something too, right? I think, because I know you guys are skirting the truth. I guess for me, I don't care enough to skirt the truth here. Some people are not going to come back to the church when the person running the church now was one of the abused. And if they never addressed when they were abused, how am I to be confident that you're not now a new perpetuator of the abuse? Okay? I'm not coming back, and I'm not sending my children when I know you never spoke out against what happened to us when we were children. And so I think there's a lot of that people need to be honest about. And we're not being honest. Instead, we're just saying there's a breakdown. There's a breakdown because we've seen repeatedly that the church in many places can't be trusted, and they're only upholding the same flawed system, okay? It's not enough to say, yes, we had abusers. The question now is, what are you doing? What was the outcome to change the abuse so that it doesn't continue today? What are you doing to protect abused women that you didn't do before? How do we believe you? Right? And it's not just that people aren't going because they don't want to pay tithes or so forth. People would pay tithes if they were really getting something back from the church, if they were seeing meaningful change from the church.
Dr. Wendy want to say something.
Upholding hierarchy. So yes, go ahead, Dr. Wendy and Keino.
Dr. Duke, I thank you for your input there, which absolutely I can connect with it. And I'll tell you, one of the things that we have to, there's a few things that I want to just address real quick.
Quick.
The church is not perfect. Let's get that. God uses flawed men and women to do his will as far as the church is concerned. Pastors don't know everything, but I think one of the major issues that we're having in today's church is that a lot of the pastors are not going through the proper training as to how to deal with the issues at hand that they're going to encounter. A lot of them don't know how to deal with abusive situations with, you know, and like you said, quite rightfully, some of them are abusers, have not gotten the help, have not even been removed, and say, listen, you got to get some counseling, get some help. You got to make sure that you are whole.
Some of them don't need any help to counsel again, to be in the church again. How many strikes are we about to give to preachers?
I understand, Mama Coco. I understand what you're saying. But then the next problem that we're having is that if people don't talk about what's going on, if you don't go to somebody, and if you, the person that you went to, you got to find somebody else to go to, because if you're there, people are not psychic. So we got to know.
Pastor Wendy,
yes,
it doesn't matter sometimes how many places you go. You see, where you have to go into you. How can we get people to go into themselves for the change to come? Change don't come when people help you.
Yeah,
change come when you helping yourself, knowing that I am guilty and I should remove myself. Why?
Of course, you have to be able to say to yourself, I am worth not being abused.
Listen, you know what we have to call a pastor or call any man of God or woman of God that's guilty of such thing? We have to treat them.
They're an abuser. Don't call them anything else but an abuser.
We have to treat them like an alcoholic. You have to remove an alcoholic from alcohol.
Yes.
You cannot
they should not be in that position, Mama Coco, if they're abusers.
Hey, with abusers, you have to remove them from
correct, it's right. I am in total agreement.
Remove children from them.
Yes.
Because they won't remove themselves because they don't believe what they're doing was wrong. So they will not remove themselves. It's you, Pastor Wendy. When
Mama Coco.
No, when you catch them, you have to report them to the board.
Yes.
And get them removed.
But here's the other question.
Don't just send them to another church.
Here's the other question, though, Mama Coco. When they get sent to another church, that means that there is a covering up. That means that the leadership is covering up, just like what happened with the Catholic Church. You know, you just reassigned him. The only thing that you did, instead of defrocking him, the only thing that you did, you sent him from Roxborough to Scarborough to go rape some more children.
That's right. It's just like in politics.
You're enabling him.
A politician commit a crime. They commit a crime of fraud, corruption, but we just move them from one ministry into another ministry.
No.
They move them from health and we put them now into what? Agriculture.
No, that cannot happen. And let me just say this also. I know that we as a people, as Black colored people, we tend to blame a lot of things on slavery. But if you go back past slavery, back into Africa, children were being corrected by their parents. Okay? They were being corrected in several different ways. Now we have to.
No, Pastor Wendy.
We have to.
Pastor Wendy, you are right.
Yes.
But remember, we have to shift the quality of correction.
I know.
We in Tobago and Trinidad and across the diaspora, we do not correct and discipline our children. We abuse our children.
Yes, that's right. And I am in total agreement with you, because I tell you something, after I had my son, and I know what the Bible said and all of that, I took a different approach in correcting him.
Me too. I used to beat.
I took a different approach. And I said, well, okay, I know that's what, you know, we were raised and that's how we were taught and that's what we came to know. But now I can tweak my correction now. And
ladies and gentlemen, we can go on forever. I see Earl Henry wrote something and I want you, Pastor Wendy, to read what Earl Henry said.
Okay. Says many pastors have a God complex which propels them to be abusive in many ways, and members continue to enable them. That is true. Seems like people forget that pastors, like everyone, have to put on their pants one leg at a time like everyone else. Make God your pastor. And if you have a pastor who've made God his pastor, by their fruit you can know them, then and only then you might want to support him or her, which is rightfully so, Professor.
No, we have something to say right now.
Now, when Dr. Duke interjected there, I was so happy because she was able to say exactly what I wanted to say about abuse and where it stems from. And on the question that you asked about the church, the Bible has been swapped around and interpreted by man in so many different ways in order to enable continual abuse of women, children within the church. So we have to really look at it, because my interpretation of the rod of correction and your interpretation of the rod of correction is two different things. The Bible also tells you to train up your child in the way that he shall go. So if you train your child in abuse, that is where they will go. So the rod for me, when I speak with my children, was not taking a whip to them and beat them, but was enabling my children to talk, to express their feelings, to say how much pain they're in, etc.
And until what you are saying here now is because of the trauma that you experienced, that you didn't want to transfer your trauma onto your children.
Not to them.
When most people just telling themselves, I was beaten, I was chastised, so me not spare you. So that is what some people keep doing. And instead of correcting your kids, training them up not to do the things that will cause them to get the beating that you, the parent, got, all you do now is to transfer your anger. And it's anger. You angry. You angry that you wasn't old enough to hit your mother, cuff in your belly, or punch you below your belly where that next thing is, or kick your father in his balls. So then you now come in now and you want to take that anger out on everybody, even in the school, even in church, even on your job. Control. Yes, even on your job, even as a landlord, even as a teacher, everybody transferring their youthful anger into mainstream society. So we have crime. Keino, can we hear from you?
Okay. Thank you. I want to say a few things. And I was really glad when Dr. Duke jumped in, that we really got to put a lot of these things that we're talking about into context. One, I was reading an article this morning on this guy that I follow on Facebook. I'm sure a lot of you follow him. His name is Sean King. But he was making a comparison of a 91-year-old Nazi sympathizer that was recently deported back to Germany to face trial for the Holocaust crimes that were committed back in the 1930s and 40s. Juxtapose this to the situation with Emmett Till that took place, I think, around 1954-ish, where he went down from Chicago to Mississippi and was brutally murdered. And his mom did something so brave. She had an open casket at his funeral. And the woman who Emmett Till lost his life over, she is still an 87-year-old woman that lives somewhere in America today. And the question that we should, that brings up is, should she still face justice for this tragic death of Emmett Till that took place in in the 1950s? And when Dr. Duke spoke about when she brought in the Jewish example of how they are continually advocating to always remember. So even today, people who persecuted the Jewish people during the Holocaust are facing justice. A 91-year-old man, how would I feel if my grandfather took part being a 19-year-old and was a Nazi sympathizer? How would I feel if he has to now go to prison? Today, that's something for me to think about, but he didn't do that. Our experience was one of slavery, and I don't think people should minimize that experience, and that experience should always be it should be contextualized in everything that we do, because it was I want to put
400 years.
I want a long time. And this week I was looking at a documentary on PBS by Skip Gates that talked about the Black church. I want to bring it back home. It was a documentary that described the history.
Listen, Keino, we will bring all these things back home. I want your point of view.
Well, this is my point of view. He talked about the Black church over 400 years of existence, and the Black church was just a reflection of the beliefs that the people brought over. And a lot of those people, there's research and evidence saying that a lot of those people came to the United States with Abrahamic religions. So whether some were Muslims before, some were Christians before. I mean, they recently talk about those who came from the Congo. A lot of them were Congolese Catholics at that time when they came over. So they had a variety of different beliefs, including Abrahamic beliefs. And he really talked about the Black church and gave a really good history for it. And one of the things specifically about the Black church in America, the Black church in the United States has always had a political spin on it that leads it to activism, that leads it to Martin Luther King, that leads it to obtaining civil rights for African Americans. By extension, we as Black people in this global diaspora, I don't think that wave of social activism hasn't yet risen up within the church because of the way religion was given to us in terms of these really organized religions like the Methodist Church, the Church of England, the Anglican Church, and so on. Where you see that activism tradition coming from is usually from that quote unquote, that Baptist tradition. And one of the places that I wish Skip Gates had went a little bit further with his documentary on the Black church is when he to be able to capture it as how it exists in places like the Caribbean, because the Black church is in those places too there, and it functions, but its function hasn't really connected us to be a really social and political activist church.
Dr. Wendy want to speak a little bit?
Sure, I'm done.
Concerning what you're saying there. We just want to keep, now we are 1 hour and 21 minutes. So that means this is the only question that we're going to handle for the day, because we ain't finished with this question yet. And I don't want to stop anyone half the way, because every point that's given is a point that we have to take. Because you see what happened? What I don't really do as a woman that's trying to make some changes or ask for some changes in our lifestyle. This is Mama Coco Life and Study. So this is the root of all the problems in TNT. We have to stay focused. We have an elephant in the room. We have to deal with that elephant.
Yes.
And not to say anything, but we have to stay focused on our society in Trinidad and Tobago, where we're killing women as if that is the only way that we can get rid of women. We have our leaders bringing down all the colonial rules and laws. We are living in a different age and time right now. And why are we only living knowing how women always being devalued from Adam and Eve right back to now? Yet every time to deal with the situation, to help a woman out, we have to go back into history to talk so much. But we're not remembering that women start suffering from things then.
If I can jump in, Mama Coco, I can say this swiftly. There's no white church or Black church. The church of God is the church of God on the earth. Okay? He's not coming back for a denomination or religion. He's coming back for people who are prepared, okay, and are obedient to his word. Secondly, as it pertains to to remembering, the Holocaust and all of that, if we're going to remember the Holocaust, then we got to remember slavery.
Exactly.
People going to pay for the Holocaust, and they got to pay for 400 years.
Yes. Okay?
That all of that has been transferred to us. The bottom line is this.
But then listen to me. You think paying
repatriation? Yes, I agree in that.
You think paying Black people money or give away something will stop the abuse of women?
It's not going to stop the abuse, Mama Coco. But what it can do, because there's such a wide gap.
What it can do?
what it can do is help to put better programs in place, get better jobs for the generations that's gonna come, more education, more health benefits that would be there for our people, because
God
even in this COVID, it's our people that's being affected the most.
God already give us our reparation in Trinidad and Tobago by giving us a land that's full of oil that we didn't make, oil that, listen.
Yeah.
No, wait a minute. And we still did not use any of that oil money to make women safer and better.
But here's my point, though, Mama Coco.
You think $1 billion or money is enough to change our laws and rules in Trinidad and Tobago?
No.
That money that we get in gonna be just put into those who in control of money.
Hey, Coco. I agree. I think, well, I actually don't disagree with reparations, but I disagree with just getting reparations without actually addressing, like you said, the elephant in the room.
We have to address the elephant.
We don't address the elephant in the room, the inequities, etc. All that reparations would do would broaden the divide, right? The poor will still stay poor. The wealthy will still find ways to take the money from the poor who receive reparations, because we actually haven't addressed the issues, for example, that keep certain communities poor, that keep certain communities, so for example, let's say we gave reparations in Tobago. Let's take Tobago that had 11,000 documented slaves, possibly 13,000, and we believe the 60,000 there right now, the majority who can say they're quote unquote native to Tobago can trace their heritage back to those slaves. Let's say the descendants of those slaves received reparations right now. How many of them will actually become way better than their life right now when the cost of land in Tobago is what it is, when the cost of building in Tobago is what it is, when the fact is, if they were to take that money and say, I want to educate my entire family, how far can that money go if we were to actually just say, let's give everyone reparations? So while reparations would be nice, we actually have to build a system to allow reparations to do the work we'd like to see it do, or else the very people who gave us reparations will then say, hey, you see what I mean? They didn't deserve reparations.
Yeah, but Dr. Duke, what I would want to address that statement with is reparations is just the beginning. Look, if we can come back to the basics, the fundamentals right now, with everything that we're dealing with, violence against women, men, people of different sexual, mindsets or whatever, people of color. I mean, this has been happening worldwide, but right down to the bottom line, there are two forces that is at work here, and that's good and evil. And it is only love that can conquer hate. When a parent really and truly love their children, they would not abuse that child. When a husband or a wife genuinely love each other, they would recognize that love protects. So there's two forces that we're dealing with. Turn it how you wanted to turn it. I had to correct someone some time back. When, the white man went to Africa and he brought us here as slaves. It was a black brother that took him into the villages because he came from England. He didn't know the land of Africa. It was a black brother that took him to wherever the village were because of greed and some shiny.
And because they were fighting. Because they naturally fought themselves, the different tribes.
You see what I'm saying? But
so that still continues anyway.
That brother back in Africa would have said, no, you can't come here. You can't put none of my brothers and my sisters in chains, and you can't take them nowhere. So there are two forces. Let's get down to the root of the problem. It's good
that is still happening today.
And if we choose good, our women would not be slaughtered like animals.
Love, Sister Wendy.
You see?
Sister Wendy, just to interject, this situation is happening under our noses between Trinidad and Tobago today. This thing that you're talking about, all of this colonial system is still in place because you have our indentured servants who are in control of. I just want to quickly say, we still have our indentured servants who came in with elevated ideologies, and they were in a better position. they still continue to hold us, to Begonians, to the slave master's will.
And that is an evil, Joanne. That is an evil.
Yes.
Hold on. That's what we're
It still
talking about.
continues.
Hold on. Let us make sure that we are using words that we don't have to get into.
Okay.
When you say indentured, who do you mean?
Should I say it? Do you want me to say it? Let me tell
you. Well, then don't.
You want me to speak?
No,
I will tell you.
That will be a very deep conversation that we are not ready for.
Oh, we're not able to do that today and now, but it is happening. Okay, no problem.
I think actually when I think it's more, I would use the model of the THA, right? I wouldn't use terms like indentured or so on, but I'll just say let's look at the model of the THA in Tobago. Yeah.
Indians came in and also the Chinese.
Right. So if we use the word indentured, it's almost like a dog whistle.
It's not them alone. There were other indentured servants as well.
Yeah, that's not what
the others are there.
Wendy, Joanne, I think what I see with Cocos, the fear is the pushback from those who hear it. They've only known indentured to mean certain people. They're gonna think that's who you're referring to, when in fact that's not who you're referring to. I think you're referring to the THA model, wherein they gave people a job, but they're low-paying wages at the end of the day. They're wages that can't really support a quality life, but it's enough to say, look at how well I take care of you. Look at how well I keep you fed. And therefore, to remind you, this is why you vote for me. What would you do without me? And unfortunately, over the number of decades, this is what we now see, right? Because I honestly don't think if you ask people of 1990 whether Tobago will look the way it looks in 2021 under the THA, anybody would have said, yes, that's where we're headed. No one would have thought that. If you ask the people of 1995, where do you see Tobago in 26 years? No one would have predicted what's happening now. And I think that's really the question we need to ask ourselves in 2021. What's the Tobago of 2040? What should it look like?
Can I ask a question?
Because it sounds like if they come back, they might find it look really nice.
No, I'm absolutely not saying that. I would say that the people of 1990 actually thought the THA was designed to uplift Tobago. They actually thought the THA gave them autonomy and gave them an access to a life they didn't have before. Because I would say 1990 to 2000 was the peak of the THA's impact on Tobago. From the year 2000, there's been a steady decline. Yes, we have a few shiny buildings to show, but there's been a steady decline in terms of the role the THA plays for the people and what they get out of the representation that they do duly go and vote for, whether it's only 30% of them voting, etc. But again, it's because nobody's having these conversations outside of the wine and dine election cycle, right? Nobody's saying, let's just talk about what the people are supposed to have from government. What are you supposed to have from your THA? What are you supposed to have from the education division, right? So it's not just what somebody says, this is what I gave you. You're supposed to say, okay, that's what you gave, but this is what we're supposed to have. Let's match them up.
Like take, for instance, Dr. Duke, people used to live long ago waiting for the end of the year to get a back pay. You know?
Yeah.
People can't get it.
Right, and now, first of all, I never understood back pay model, and I still don't get the back pay model. And I shouldn't say I don't get it. I understand philosophically how it works. I just don't understand why they still have to be so reliant on a back pay model. Let me explain that, right? I don't understand why it's so reliant on it, but it's the structure of the system, and that's a structure that's never, and it's shameful to admit it, because we have amazing scholars. You look at what Eric Williams actually wrote, what his thesis was at Oxford, and you look at how many other post-colonial places actually use his work to help inform their movement. Yeah, and to liberate their people. And you realize, okay, we actually did start off on a model that's beautiful, but what we didn't spend time doing, it seems, I would say it seems, because I know some people would argue, but I would say when you look at, I'm not saying it seems when you look at the general large swaths of the population. I don't care if 10% of people say they broke away from colonialism. I'm concerned about the 90 who are still being victimized by the relics of colonialism and the structure of colonialism. I don't want to talk about the 10%. I don't want people telling me, but Cindy, your life is better. I don't give a few farts about that, because the question is more, what happens after I've died? What happens to the people? Because right now what's happening with people in post-colonial societies is small families get lifted up, but the whole nation doesn't lift, the whole community doesn't lift. And is it really worth it for me to say I lifted up if my community is still looking and struggling?
I'm glad you're on, so we can shift this thing here now.